After finishing my morning shopping at the market, I squatted at the doorstep of my house with 2 pounds of pork belly in hand, smoking 2 cigarettes. Old Zhang, walking his dog, happened to pass by. Last year, his daughter bought him a Pekingese. The little creature stopped and sniffed at my shoes. "Whoa, you bought meat. Someone as frugal as you. I've never seen you buy so much meat before," Old Zhang commented, eyeing the pork belly. A little embarrassed, I explained, "My daughter's bringing her fiancé over today. I thought I'd make something nice, braised pork." "They're not even officially married yet, and you're already calling him your son-in-law?" Old Zhang teased. "Then why are you sitting out here? Why not go inside?" "They've already registered their marriage. I'm just used to smoking outside," I said, dropping the cigarette butt on the ground and stomping it out. A smile, full of wrinkles, stretched across my face. Back when my wife was still around, she wouldn't let me smoke in the house. Even after she was gone, I never got used to smoking indoors. "Ah, you," Old Zhang said, picking up his Pekingese, trying to comfort me. "It's been years since she passed. Your daughter married into a good family, and the wedding banquet's coming up soon, isn't it? You should let go a little." I nodded. "Yeah." Old Zhang then looked at my hair and clothes, frowning. "You're about to become a father-in-law. At least dye your hair black. It'll make you look more spirited. And those clothes of yours, how many years have you been wearing them? They're so faded you can't even tell what color they used to be. Sure, they're clean, but they make you look shabby. Buy yourself something decent to wear." "It's no big deal. For my daughter's wedding, I plan to wear the suit I wore at my own wedding. It'll make me look sharp." I waved him off. After chatting with Old Zhang, I went back into the yard. Out of habit, I glanced at a certain spot in the yard. Old Huang's doghouse was empty. I always forget that Old Huang passed away last spring. Inside the house, as I changed into slippers, I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror. An old, tall, skinny man with graying hair and drooping eyes, with wrinkles so deep they could hold a green bean. In my hand were 2 slabs of pork belly. Old Zhang wasn't wrong. I did look shabby, and I knew it. I was old. They say when people grow old, there's nothing they can't let go of anymore. I used to think that too. But I knew deep down that I changed suddenly 5 years ago, after my daughter's mother fell ill and passed away. I couldn't let go. My daughter's mother was named Xiaohong. When we were younger, I used to call her Xiaohong affectionately. It was my first year working in the city when my brother-in-law fell off a tractor and broke his leg. He was sent to the city hospital for surgery. My sister was frantic and called my workplace, urging me to come help. My brother-in-law had a severe fracture, a crushed shin. I ran around the hospital like mad, paying bills, fetching results, practically flying up the stairs. That flying caused trouble, though. On the staircase, I bumped into a nurse in a white coat. She was coming down, and I was rushing up. We collided so hard she fell to the ground, scraping her right elbow in the process. That was the first time I met Xiaohong. Every time we talked about it over the years, Xiaohong would laugh and say I was reckless when I was young. I never admitted it in front of our daughter. Honestly, I bumped into you on purpose. How else could I have asked you out after your shift? I'd tease. Xiaohong always exposed my lie. "Ask me out? You mean skulking into our department with a tiny watermelon as an apology gift and getting laughed at by all the nurses? Sure, you bought me food after my shift. Hospital cafeteria fried noodles. That watermelon cost me 2.5 yuan, and the fried noodles with pork strips were 50 cents. I still remember. I'd argue, counting on my fingers. You're as stingy as ever." Xiaohong and our daughter were always on the same side, teasing me for being tight-fisted. But I knew they never truly minded. It took me 2 years to go from meeting Xiaohong to pestering her until she agreed to marry me. I was from a countryside and didn't have much to offer in terms of a bride price. But my parents didn't want to let a city girl like Xiaohong down, so they gave me all their savings. When I showed Xiaohong the bundle of money wrapped in rough red cloth, a mix of coins and bills ranging from 1 yuan to 100 yuan, She grabbed my hand and said, "Give this back to your parents. Even without a bride price, I'll still marry you." The wedding was held in our yard. Back then, wedding gowns weren't a thing. Xiao Hong hired a tailor to make us matching bright red suits with flared sleeves, wide pant legs, and broad shoulders. It made us look like we were propped up on stilts. Relatives and friends sat at tables in the yard, praising how beautiful the bride looked. That day, I felt like the luckiest guy in the world. When it was time for the bride and groom to give speeches, I pulled out a piece of paper I had prepared in advance. I've always had a problem with public speaking. Facing a crowd makes me too nervous to say a word. But it was my wedding day. I could not say something. So I had written Xiao Hong a letter. All I had to do was read it to her, and that way I wouldn't feel so nervous. To my wife, Xiao Hong. As soon as I read the opening line, my childhood buddies whistled and hooted. I had a bit of wine in me, so I wasn't embarrassed. To my wife, Xiao Hong. Today is our wedding day. I've spent a long time thinking about what to say, and in the end, I have to admit that I'm not good with words. I can't say anything flowery. So, let me just keep it simple and sincere. I wish for you and me a happy and fulfilling life together, for us to have children soon, and for us to grow old side by side. It seems that heaven answered the 3 wishes I made at our wedding. 6 months after Xiao Hong and I got married, she became pregnant. That day, I came home from work, and as soon as I walked through the door, Xiao Hong hugged me tightly. Xiao Hong is not like most women. She's never one to act coy and is even more capable than most men when it comes to getting things done. So when she suddenly hugged me like that, I felt uneasy. I started wondering, did I do something wrong recently? "What's going on, honey?" I asked. "I'm pregnant," she said. "Huh? Pregnant with what?" "You silly man. I'm having a baby." Xiao Hong's pregnancy became a big deal for both families. My in-laws immediately sent over a ton of supplements and all the snacks Xiao Hong loved. My mom brought us fresh eggs from the countryside, and the baby clothes she had started sewing the day Xiao Hong and I got married. My dad, on the other hand, silently built a crib from old elm wood he had at home. 2 weeks later, he had someone from the village bring it into the city for us. Xiao Hong thought I was making too big of a fuss, telling everyone in the world about her pregnancy. "I don't think I've told enough people," I replied one evening as I lay beside her, my hand on her barely noticeable baby bump. "Honey, you've worked so hard. What should I give you as a reward?" I already had something in mind. I was planning to buy Xiao Hong a gold necklace or a ring. After all, when she married me, I couldn't give her anything. "I want a dog," Xiao Hong said, surprising me. "One that can guard the house. We can keep it in the yard." I paused for a moment, but when I thought about it, getting a dog was much more affordable than jewelry. "Sure. I'll bring one home tomorrow." I agreed. That's how old Huang, a lazy little yellow mutt, came into our lives. When I brought him home, he was just a tiny pup. By the time Xiao Hong gave birth, old Huang had grown into a capable guard dog, barking at strangers and keeping watch over the house. Xiao Hong is a woman who knows how to live a good life. She worked, cooked, tended the garden, raised our child, and took care of the dog. With her around, everything in the house, myself included, was always in perfect order. When our daughter was 5 years old, the factory where I worked went under, and I lost my job. To support the family, I pooled some money with a few friends and started a small business. But starting a business is easy. Making money is hard. I guess I'm not cut out for it because after more than a year, I barely earned anything. That entire year, our household relied solely on Xiao Hong's salary. When it rains, it pours. That year, my father began complaining of persistent stomach pain. My sister took him to the hospital, and he was diagnosed with liver cancer. My father had smoked all his life. The cancer was already in its late stages. The doctor said, he has no more than 3 months. Treatment isn't meaningful at this point. As his son, it was my duty to take care of him in his final days. I brought my father to live with us and took him, for the first time in his life, to Beijing to see Tiananmen Square and Chairman Mao's portrait. That year, after my father passed, my business finally started to take off, and I made my first profit. I brought home 2 stacks of cash and handed them to Xiaohong. "Honey, you've worked so hard this past year," I said. I had so much to say but could only manage. "I've made you suffer." Xiaohong lightly tapped me on the shoulder. "Why are you saying silly things like that? I'm your wife and your daughter's mother," she said as she carefully put the money away. "I never felt like I was suffering. I know you struggled this past year with the business, barely bringing anything home. Even if you didn't say it, I could feel how tough it was for you. But knowing that I was by your side, going through it together with you, made it all bearable." That day, Xiaohong added, "Our daughter's dad, you should cut back on smoking. Look at what happened to your father." I nodded solemnly. That night, after the lights went out, I cried silently in bed. A grown man shouldn't cry, but I couldn't help it. I always knew I had married a good wife. But that day, I realized Xiaohong wasn't just a good wife. She was my blessing, my home, and the best part of my life. When our daughter was in college, she had a boyfriend. At first, she and Xiaohong kept it from me, but one summer night, I found her crying in bed. That's when I learned the boy had been seeing another girl behind her back. My daughter was heartbroken, struggling to move on. When Xiaohong noticed that our daughter locked herself in her room and refused to eat, she deliberately raised her voice, pretending to chat with me. All these shows and social media nowadays keep talking about divorce and cheating. It's so discouraging. But those are just isolated cases and shouldn't be blown out of proportion. I think there are still plenty of people who are loyal and faithful. We need to have faith in love, don't you think? Xiaohong shot me a look, prompting me to play along. "Absolutely," I replied, raising my voice. I took a bite of food, realized it was too salty, and quickly drank some soup. Most people still lead happy lives and stay committed. You've just got to look forward. The right person will come along eventually. Xiaohong seemed pleased with my response. She sat down to eat, took a bite, and frowned. Did I add too much salt? I was so preoccupied thinking about our daughter. I shook my head. Not at all. It tastes perfect to me. Really? Not salty. Really? Why would I lie to you? As the stew bubbled away on the stove, I thought about all the times Xiaohong had been by my side. People often wish newlyweds a happy and blissful life, or to grow old together, as if the two are of equal difficulty. I never thought about it before. It wasn't until I lost the love of my life that I realized achieving happiness isn't the hardest thing in the world. The hardest thing is growing old together. When my daughter brought her fiancé home, I had just finished setting the dishes on the table. "Dad, we bought you 2 cartons of cigarettes." I had met the young man twice before. He was an honest guy, not particularly talkative, but since he found out I smoked, he always brought good cigarettes for me. I put the cigarettes away and asked the 2 of them to wash up for dinner. At the table, I habitually spat out the fatty meat I didn't like into a clean bowl. My daughter glanced at me a few times and asked, "Dad, what are you doing?" "The fatty meat is for old Huang. He loves it. No sense wasting it," I said, not realizing anything was amiss. "Dad, old Huang's been gone for almost a year now," my daughter said with a sigh, her eyes showing a touch of sadness. "Oh," I stared at the small bowl for a couple of seconds before dumping the fatty meat into the trash can at my feet. "I'm getting old. I must have forgotten." The fiancé, observing our exchange, quietly placed a piece of meat on my plate and said, "Dad, if you like dogs, I can bring you another one sometime." I shook my head. "No need," I said, smiling at the young man. In my eyes, there'll never be a dog as good as old Huang. Hearing this, my daughter seemed to think of something. A tear dropped into her bowl. She quickly picked up the bowl and started eating, trying to hide it from us 2 men. I knew she was thinking about Xiaohong. Finally, the day of my daughter's wedding arrived. I wore the suit from my own wedding day. When the bridesmaid told me I could now go to the dressing room to escort the bride down the aisle, I suddenly felt a little nervous. I pushed open the door, and my daughter turned to face me, radiant in her white wedding gown. She looked like a fairy. "Dad, do I look good?" she asked, a little shy and expectant. I choked up for a moment. "You look beautiful." As my daughter held onto my arm and we walked down the aisle, I felt as if I had been transported back to my own wedding years ago. In our village courtyard, walking past our guests and over the red fabric on the ground, with Xiao Hong holding my arm. At the end of the red carpet, I placed my daughter's hand in her groom's and stepped down from the stage. I watched her slip on the ring, watched her kiss her husband, watched them embrace and cry tears of joy. I took out my handkerchief and wiped the tears from my own eyes. Later, the MC announced it was time for family members to give speeches. I was called first. I took the speech I had written in advance and walked up to the stage. I've always had a problem with public speaking. I get so nervous in front of a crowd that I can barely say anything. But this was my daughter's wedding. I couldn't stay silent. So just like at my own wedding years ago, I wrote a letter to Xiao Hong. To my wife, Xiao Hong. Today is our daughter's wedding day. I've put a lot of thought into tidying myself up, dyed my hair black, and even brought out the suit you've been carefully keeping for me all these years. Yes, the same one I wore when I married you. Wide sleeves, wide pants, still more stylish than anything popular today. Old Huang stayed with me for 4 years after you left, but he passed away last spring. I know he was never one to move around much, and didn't like running outside like other dogs. So, I didn't bury him far away. I buried him under the old locust tree in our yard. You were right. Old Huang was never much like a dog, more like a lazy cat. When I buried him, I told him to come back as a cat in his next life, so he could keep you warm under the blankets in winter. Old Huang is gone now, and from now on, our daughter won't be around much either. Like I just said, she's getting married today. The young man seems like a good kid, so there's no need for you to check him out. You're better than me in many ways, but when it comes to judging people, you'll have to admit, I've always been better at it. I believe this son-in-law will treat our daughter well. Of course, to establish my authority as the father-in-law, I need to say this in front of everyone today. If he ever mistreats our daughter, not only will I not forgive him, but neither will you, right? If that happens, you'll have to come down and give him a talking to. And while you're at it, come see me too. Now that I've laid down the law, I also need to bless them. I've been pondering for days, if you were still here, what would you say to our daughter and her husband? Eventually, I figured it out. Neither of us is particularly sweet-tongued, and we can't come up with flowery words. So I thought, let's just keep it simple. Wish them happiness and harmony, and may they have children soon. Alright, it's a joyful occasion today, so I won't say too much. I'll save some words for later, so I can nag them on your behalf in the future. As for the things I want to tell you, there's so much more, but it's not appropriate to say it all here. At my age, I don't want to be laughed at. I'll see you in my dreams tonight. Then I'll tell you everything. I just miss you.